want to bring in a couple of brothers who I got so much love for, and that is Jim Trotter and Steve Wyche, both longtime NFL reporters.
Look at these dudes.
These guys know the NFL inside and out, but more important, throw up the picture of their new podcast. It's called Huddle Flow, okay? And on this podcast, Steve.
Who came up with the title? Was it Trotter? Was it Trotter or Wyche who came up with the title?
Yeah, who came up with the title?
Neither.
It was also Howard Mann.
There you go. There it is. I want y'all to see it. Look at this artwork. Look at this. If that ain't pimping, that is befitting of Jim Trotter and Steve Wyche right there. They bring 40-plus years of combined experience, and they got unfiltered, entertaining conversations about issues on and off the field, and they discuss the HBCU experience both then and now and the significance of HBCUs and their contributions to sports and society. So let's just start there. I'll start there with you, Trot. Billy D. Williams' voice of yours, man. It's good to talk to you. Just kind of speak to the significance, first and foremost, of Howard University in your life and your career.
Oh, I don't think we have enough time to speak to the significance in my life and my career. You have to remember, I grew up going to predominantly white high schools and white high schools, period, or schools, period, I'm sorry. And once I got to Howard, it was, I can't even begin to put into words. I just felt at home. You know, I was at a place where I felt like I was more than a number, that the expectations for me were such that I was going to succeed. It was a nurturing atmosphere, and I loved it. And I can say to this day, having graduated in 1986, that if I were to do it all over again, I would be right back there.
Steve, you feel the same way?
Yeah, look, and I had the experience of going to a PWI, predominantly white institution. For 2 years, I went to the University of Missouri to play football and really felt isolated. And I grew up like Jim in a suburban town outside of St. Louis. Majority white students, never had, I think, but one or two black teachers my entire career before I got to college. So I transferred to Howard, and immediately it was like, whoa, okay, I'm not over here. I don't have to go to the 2 fraternity parties every week to be with black people. And so it was really, the competition. What I'll say this, Howard will bring out the competition, everything, how you dress to go to class, to Mike was just talking about, to pushing you in school. So I transferred in right as Jim and Kamala were transferring out, and I was there with Gus Johnson and Stan Verrett and Frederica Whitfield and Michelle Miller. I mean, Jim will tell you, I'm sure his class was just as strong, that cluster. So we were all driven competitively in so many different ways. And I think that's where the carryover into real life really happened for me.
Tell me about the podcast. I mean, it's a great title. Neither one of you came up with the title, so I need to know who came up with it, and just what you were looking or what you are looking to get out of it.
Well, our producer, one of our co-producers, Thomas Warren, came up with the name, and he's a Howard man as well. And we were thinking about all sorts of names. And Steve came up with something like "We Got Issues." And I love that, but others thought, no, it's a little too confrontational, or the connotations aren't what you might want. But really all it is, guys, it's like you and I sitting down having a conversation, and we come from a perspective that's different from some of our colleagues, our white colleagues. And so Steve and I, when I first got to NFL Network, we talked about doing a podcast, and we're now in a climate where the league felt comfortable allowing us to do this podcast, and I couldn't be happier about it because, Steve brings a certain experience, life experience. I bring a life experience, and we just sit down and we talk about what's going on. And it's not just football, it's life, it's family, it's television, whatever.
And guys, the one thing about that's really cool, when Jim talked about, we've been trying to do this for 2 years. I mean, in all honesty, we first proposed it, we were laughed out of the room. We were made to feel like we wasted somebody's time. And so now in this climate, when a lot of people want to pat themselves on the back for being woke and coming up with initiatives that represent people, it was brought back to us. So Jim and I were like, however we get it, we're going to make it real. We're going to make it important. We're going to give voices to people who have not had them. we will take on the NFL, even though our employers, those are the first 3 letters of our employer's name. We challenge them. We have people on challenging some of the marketing machine that they're coming up with, like lift every voice and sing. That's nobody asked for that, right? So we have discussions talking about this with sports people, with non-sports people. And I got to say this about my guy, Jim Trotter, and you guys know this well. His ability to draw information out of people, casual conversation, is uncanny. We just had a great conversation with Doug Williams on HBCUs and with Deion Sanders is going to face at Jackson State, and with Larry Fitzgerald. And what Jim was able to really pull out of this, everybody should hear. So, look, it's a go-to if you're same type of sports guy podcast. It's absolutely
don't let Steve fool y'all, man. Steve is bringing it out too. It ain't just me, it's both of us. So trust me on that.
Look, hey, listen, you know I got love for both you brothers. Both y'all have looked out for me, and I have modeled a lot of my game. I started out as an NFL reporter, and trust me, I was joined at the hip with Jim Trotter and same
y'all
with Steve
don't
Wyche.
hold on. Y'all don't know. I remember first time I ever saw Michael Smith. I'm at a Raiders press conference in Alameda. And this young brother's sort of in the back of the room, and he's standing up while everyone else is kind of fidgeting about what questions do they want to ask or should I ask this. And Mike's just like, what about this? What about this? And I was like, this brother's going to be all right. You know, had never met him, didn't know him. He was back in Boston at the Globe, and I was like, he going to be all right. And look at him now. He's here with Michael Holley, and they both bringing game. Proud of you both.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. And Steve, everything you just said about how it was received 2 years ago, you could take that and insert Michael and I's story. It's the same story, man. So you are definitely preaching to our souls right there. And by the way, while we're showing love, a lot of people don't realize this. The conversation around Colin Kaepernick is so mainstream, if you will, or so universally accepted, and we're so far removed from his original protest. People don't remember that Steve Wyche is the person who first asked Colin Kaepernick, Kaepernick, why were you sitting for the national anthem? And the rest is history. That's the Steve Wyche story, just in case y'all didn't know where this entire conversation started, at least the modern version of it, it started with Steve Wyche. I want to ask, though, just about, you say you talked to talked to Doug Williams about Deion taking the gig at Jackson State. Steve, for those of us who haven't had a chance to listen to the podcast yet, and again, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, what did Doug have to say? Again, Grambling State alum, former Grambling State coach, and most people know him as the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl with the Washington football team back in 87, 88. What did he have to say about Deion going to Jackson State?
Well, Jim and I, since we couldn't get Deion because he's got another podcast obligation, so he can't go on other people's podcasts, Jim thought it was appropriate. Jim and I thought it was appropriate to have Doug because Doug has been right. Doug was a household name. He started coaching at Morehouse, eventually went to go coach at Grambling. But we talked about some of the things that Deion brings: the ability to recruit, the ability to draw sponsors, the ability to bring teams to a campus that rarely is happening. Remember, this is school that produced Len Barney and Walter Payton and schools like that. But also, Doug had the great perspective of fundraising at HBCUs. It's very difficult because HBCUs, when people give money, they often won't let you earmark it for an athletic program or a particular sport or whatever. So Doug was just fantastic talking about that. But, guys, he was also very good. Doug is on several committees working with the NFL to increase diversity among coaching and general manager hires. And he was exceptional talking about that because, remember, most HBCUs are not going to play into the spring when it comes to football. There's only one player from an HBCU drafted last year. Now they're going to be behind the eight ball in terms of drafting players. So Doug's on a committee to bring awareness to some of these draft-eligible players. So it's really wide-ranging and a condensed solution. But we did come up with the best answer on how owners can meet general manager and coaching candidates. And you guys can come to now.
Doug came up with it.
We're having a cookout at Doug Williams' house in D.C.
Yeah, he said his wife is going to make gumbo.
I love it.
So we're going to bring all the owners in.
Listen.
A cookout.
Hold on. Y'all got a date? Y'all got a date yet?
I was going to say, what is it?
Juneteenth, maybe? Juneteenth weekend?
Of course. Naturally. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. That's what we spend in Juneteenth.
What owner is going to say no to a cookout on Juneteenth at Doug's house, knowing that if you do say no, we're going to put it out there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they get the credibility. I'm invited to the cookout. They get that out of it, you know?
I got a couple of things for you. Wyche said something a few minutes ago that, and it takes me back to our first show. Our first show, we were talking about Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is such a powerful song for me and my entire family that I said in our first show, I'm not ready to share that. I'm not ready to share that with the nation, especially when it's going to be pulled and tugged in this often contentious and very silly political fight. Do you feel that way? How do you feel about it, Steve, and how do you feel about it, Jim? Because I'm holding on to Lift Every Voice and Sing. I don't want to share it with anybody.
It's not a matter of not sharing. I mean, I'm all about educating those who want to be educated and whatnot. It was, when we're talking about police officers not being held accountable for shooting and killing unarmed black men and women, I don't need to hear the Black National Anthem or something that I grew up in church singing or something that my family passed. I want to hear legislators talking about changing the laws that allow these types of transgressions to continue. I don't give a damn about this. In empty stadiums, you're playing it? I mean, that's just a backpacking. To me, it's something like people patting themselves on the back like, look at this marketing gesture we came out with. Aren't we woke now?
But that's the point. I don't want. That's what I mean. But I don't want it to be. And what you're saying is right, 100%. I don't want it to be caught up in like some marketing, some shtick. It's much more than shtick to me. So put that aside, and as you said, get to the substantive issues. How do you feel about it, Trotter?
No, I feel exactly the same. Look, we have to remember it was only a year ago where the commissioner of the NFL said we have moved on. We have moved beyond all of this. And now what do we have? We have hashtags. We have end racism in the end zones. We have the names of social justice victims on the back of helmets. We have PSAs. And then we have Lift Every Voice and Sing being played prior to the national anthem. It's like the league is trying too hard to prove that somehow it is woke and aware. As Anquan Bolden said on our podcast regarding the fight for social justice, just do the work. The rest will take care of itself. And unfortunately, as you guys know, the NFL is always reactionary instead of being proactive. Stop trying to get people to pat you on the back and show that you're woke and committed to your players. Just do the work, and the rest will speak for itself.
And meanwhile, that same NFL is using a racist standard to deny players, former players, claims, that suffer from dementia, suffer from brain trauma, using a racist standard to reject their claims there. I know you guys got to go.
But let me ask you
nice
this, Michael. Did you or anyone else who has followed the NFL for all of these years think that this CTE settlement was going to resolve all of this? Because I know I didn't.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I lost you. What'd you say?
No. Can you hear me, Mike Smith?
I can hear you. I can hear you now, Jim. I'm sorry. I was having audio issues. What'd you say? I missed you.
No, I was just saying that did anyone really believe that the CTE settlement was going to settle this issue? Because there are a lot of folks I've been told even back in the beginning that all of these review processes were going to be dragged out, and as morbid as this may sound, hoping that some of these players would pass away and the families would never see that money. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised that there are these standards out there that are now inhibiting a retired player's ability to get money.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, sorry about that, man. My audio went out, dropped off for a second. So thank you for that point. Listen, you guys were nice enough. Take time out of your busy day. Y'all got another news-breaking interview that you guys got to get to. Before we go, I got one last thing. I got two things for you. One, can we please do this again? And by again, I mean regularly, okay? I want to do more of this with you guys. But two, real quick, you mentioned Doug Williams. A couple years ago, the Undefeated put out a list of the best HBCU athletes. They had Doug Williams at the top, obviously,
crazy
performance in Super Bowl 22.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but
that's crazy.
Historic performance nonetheless. I'll let him live. So, Wyche, you first, then Trotter, your greatest HBCU athlete. I know that's putting you on the spot, but greatest HBCU athlete of all time.
Oh, man, it's either Wilma Rudolph or Walter Payton.
Okay. I like it.
I mean, I'm not gonna argue with Wilma, but I'm gonna go the other way in football and say Jerry Rice.
All right.
He's the GOAT for a reason.
Yep. So we got Tennessee State, we got Jackson State represented, and we got Mississippi Valley State represented. And HU, the pride of HU, Steve Wyche, Jim Trotter, Huddle and Flow is the podcast. Love y'all, man. Thank y'all so much for falling through.
Appreciate you.
Other brothers,
Appreciate you.
Appreciate y'all.